Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews. It's Gaming Friday. I'm Gary.
And I'm new to this game.
Well, we are looking at Dragon Age Inquisition, which came out in 2014 and is the third in the Dragon Age series of games.
Whoa.
This is from BioWare, who of course made some amazing games like Baldur's Gate,
Yeah.
the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, and my personal favourite, Mass Effect.
Yeah.
And of course, Mass Effect Andromeda is due out shortly, and so I wanted to go back and have a look at one of BioWare's latest big games, which was Inquisition.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Dragon Age Origins came out in 2009. It had a huge expansion, which is another campaign called Awakening, which
Yeah.
came out in 2010. And then we had Dragon Age 2 in 2011. And then Inquisition in 2014. Now, I've loved the Dragon Age series of games, Ian.
Right,
now,
yeah.
Right now, you said you've never played a Dragon Age game.
No.
I'm throwing you in, sort of skipping the intro here and throwing you in with... I started a new character after completing it. I started... This is my third character. My second character only got halfway through, and then I was like, I'm going to make another character.
Right, okay.
That's because I got tired of looking at my model character that I created, and of course I'm a huge fan of Game of Thrones, and so I made my attempt to make... Daenerys.
Oh shit! Oh,
So
whoa,
she kind of looks partially like Daenerys from Game of Thrones, but
Yeah.
not quite. But I did my best, and then I never actually continued playing. And that's to be said that Dragon Age Origins, when it came out in 2009, that for me changed the way I was looking at games.
Yeah.
I'd played lots of RPGs. At this point, I'd already said I'd started to grow tired of the Japanese RPGs.
Yeah, yeah.
And Dragon Age Origins, I completed it about 7 times from start to finish. I played male and female. I tried all the different classes and races. I liked all the interactions with all of your party members and the way that it impacted and changed the world around you, your choices that you made and how it impacted the world. I'd never played a game that had that promise and delivered.
Right.
The only thing I'd had prior to that was perhaps Fable.
Yeah.
But that was still, a family game.
Yeah.
Dragon Age had some really adult material in there. And it was one of the first games I remember having what would you say, a sex scene that was done artistically.
Right,
It still
okay.
managed to get into the news and upset everyone. They're like, oh, there's bums and boobs in Dragon Age, so people shouldn't play it.
Yeah, those people haven't played The Witcher.
Well, no, they probably did. And so, now one of the great things about all the Dragon Age games is the characters and how
Yeah.
beautifully written they are. There's you put all the dialogue from the Dragon Age games and you'd have novel after novel. And that's to say that there are, at this point in time, at least 5 novels in the Dragon Age universe. There's a tabletop game. There's an anime film. There's comics. There's spin-offs. There's action figures. There's a web series.
Wow.
There is DLC for every single Dragon Age game. And I only played some DLC for Dragon Age Origins. Like I said, I played Awakening. I didn't get any of the DLC for Dragon Age 2. Dragon Age 2, I completed it maybe 3 times.
Yeah.
And just got some of the variations that I wanted to. In that game, it really came down to deciding whether you were going to help the mages
Yeah.
or whether you were going to help the Templars. And that really builds into Inquisition, where at this point in time, the Templars and their mages are at full-blown war.
Okay.
And what also happens to start this story off is that giant green magical rifts start opening up across the land.
Yeah.
And you are tasked with forming the Inquisition, teaming up with either the Templars or the mages,
Yeah.
and stopping these rifts that are opening up everywhere, which are letting out basically the Darkspawn.
Yeah. These things, these evil sorcerer things that I'm fighting
Yes,
at the moment.
the Darkspawn. It was the major enemy in Dark Souls. Dark Souls. It came out. I said it. It slipped up. In Dragon Age Origins, the main enemy in that game was the Darkspawn. It was the Blight.
Yeah.
And the Blight happens every so many ages, and and literally cause havoc until they are wiped out. I also love the story of the dwarves that live in these underground labyrinths that were mining, and eventually they found the Darkspawn. And I love the stories of dwarves that when they've reached their end, they just go into those tunnels, never to surface again, just to kill as many Darkspawn as possible.
Nice.
There's so much lore in this game. And, going into Inquisition, if you don't know any of the lore, the game does drip feed it to you. There's lots of little booklets and little text screens that come up, which is not the best for getting story across.
Yeah.
But if you've played the previous Dragon Age games, you know all the lore. You know these territories. You know who's allied with who, and depending on the choices that you've made. And that was, again, one of the other great things, is that your character saves. You wouldn't necessarily be playing the same character. Actually, you play a different character in every Dragon Age game. But the characters that you created in those original games reappear in this game. And so the impact and the stories have all shaped and changed, which lead to this game, which is... Oh, it's just brilliant. It's just so good.
You're very excited now.
I'm very excited. I mean, there was the big thing when this game came out. This was at the tail end of the 360 and PS3 era, going into the PS4 and Xbox One. This game released on both platforms.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, how do I take my save from the 360 to the Xbox One? And I think there was an online sort of app that you could do, and it let you literally look at both the Dragon Age games before it, including Awakening, and choose all of the things that happen to you, and then you download that to your Xbox One, and then it goes, there's your save.
Wow,
so
that's cool.
Oh, such brilliance, and because I never even thought it possible that you would carry saves across through multiple games, and even though you're not carrying on your character, all of the decisions that character had made impact on it. And this is all just going back to Dragon Age 1. I fell in love with that game. I was so immersed in that world that when I dream, I never dream about films that I've watched or games that I've played.
Yeah.
Until Dragon Age. Dragon Age got into my mind. It got into my soul. The characters did. They became more real than any other characters in a video game, book, TV series, or book. Anything I've ever read or experienced. Fell in love with the characters in Dragon Age to the point where they were characters in my dream.
Nice.
I'd play Dragon Age all day and then go to bed and play Dragon Age all night. I'd come to the game the next day and I'd be like, well, what happened to the choices I made last night? Oh, it was just a dream. That is how well written this game is. And it has some of the best characters in any video game. When people go all about side characters in video games, I'm like, all the Mass Effect and Dragon Age characters.
Yeah.
Just beautifully written and explored, and the fact that you get to see different nuances of these characters depending on which race, whether you're male or female, how it impacts on them and the choices that you make.
Yeah.
There's nothing else like it. There's nothing else like it.
I mean, the choices they used to make in the Mass Effect games I thought were pretty big, but then by the time I got to Mass Effect 3, it hadn't really made that much of an impact.
Well,
I felt like my character in Mass Effect was a badass because I'd been a badass all the way through.
Yeah.
But still, by the end of Mass Effect 3, with all the issues that you have with the ending and things like that,
I
was just like, didn't
get to see how it impacted everything you did.
Yeah.
Well, they kind of retconned that a little bit, and they chucked in, like 15, 20 minutes of extra scenes into
but that should be in the game.
Yes,
that
it
should be in
been.
the game.
Now, Dragon Age, throughout its series of games, is it had that Fallout-esque ending where it just sort of had these sort of still image vignettes of text and dialogue just saying, that's what happened to this character after you went and did this, and this is what happened to this character after you went into this. So there is a sense of finality, and that you see how the world is shaped after the events of the game once you've completed it.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant. Now, the original Dragon Age games, especially if you want to look at Dragon Age 2, received a lot of complaints that you would reuse the same one dungeon like 15, 20 times.
Yeah, okay.
Exact same dungeon. It would be like, but this time this door is open and this door is closed. And it's
Right.
got different monsters in it.
Okay.
And you go to the exact same point in that same dungeon for the 15th time and pick up a different item from that corner because that's now the level appropriate item that you need. And it was horrible. It was so rushed. And so there was a bit more of a gap between 2 and Inquisition.
Yeah.
And this game has a world map. It is huge. It is the first area that you go to in this game is the size of Dragon Age 1.
Wow.
Now, we have seen in more recent games that, yes, big, huge open world maps are brilliant.
Yeah.
As long as you put stuff in it.
Yes.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
This game falls into that category of being one of the first games I can think of that had these beautifully detailed, rich environments that were empty. Now, they weren't necessarily empty. There was like items that you could get and potions and other bits that you could sort of use to work with in crafting and other stuff later on. But for the most part, the world was huge. And the game company literally said to people, leave the first area, please. You've been here for 15 hours. There's still all these other areas to go to. But the OCD and most of us gamers are like, I'm not leaving this area. And so I picked up all the items and exhausted it. But it's like, no, go to another area, come back and explore later when you've got a horse and you can move faster. But, yeah, still.
Yeah, it's how you make it. I do like the fact that I've just picked up these characters. So I've got the dwarf character here.
Varric, I think he is.
Yeah, Varric. While in tactical camera, use the left stick to scan the battlefield.
Now, in Dragon Age 1, the combat system was, let's just say, it was particularly difficult the harder you ramped up the difficulty, and often or not you would end up pausing the combat so that you could jump to each one of your characters and give them a chain of commands that they would then go and do, and then you sort of unpause the combat, let it play out and pause it again, decide who needs potions, who needs buffs, debuffs, which enemies to focus your fire on, who you need to pick off the ranged enemies, etc., etc. This game, is difficult the harder the difficulty is that you jump up. And I did finish it on its hardest difficulty, in which case you will need to jump into the tactical camera mode, which pauses the game, and it sort of goes sort of an RTS, sort of top-down, bird's-eye view looking down at all of your characters. And from there, you can then map and waypoint where you want your characters to go, whether you want to block off doorways in the dungeon with your tank, where you get your mages in the back and your archers somewhere else. And so the way that you build up your character in conjunction with the party members that you choose is really how you balance the difficulty in the game.
Wow, that's deep.
That is deep. And so Dragon Age 2 sort of mumbled that a little bit and streamlined a hell of a lot from Dragon Age 1. Dragon Age Inquisition sort of combines both the latter games into the system that's in this one, which I think is good for new players, and it's also adds that extra challenge for more experienced Dragon Age players that are familiar with the difficulty, want the challenge, and want that tactical mode, although it's not essential.
Yeah, I was going to say, I could change it now. So we got Varric here. Who else? I'm looking for the elf.
That's Cassandra, who's your warrior.
And then you've got
Solus.
Daenerys.
That's your character,
that's
who I think is a rogue.
And Solus, who's the elf. And obviously, so he's putting all the magic onto them. And I should really be falling back with them. But I'm also covering her.
Yeah, well, she's your main fighter. She's your only real fighter in the group. I guess the rogue, you can decide whether you want to get in there and twin dagger blades or stay at back and do archery. And then as you level up, you can evolve the character to be more of whichever one you prefer him to be.
Yeah, so I'm going to flick to...
And so also then, obviously, depending on which party members you want to bring and which classes they are, obviously, you don't really want to go out on a mission with all mages. You at least want a tank character in there to support.
Yeah.
And so what I also love is that this is something that some games get wrong, and I hate it, is that as you level up, all the enemies level up. But this game doesn't have that. So if you decide, I'm going to go to this area on the world map, and then there's a dragon which one hit kills your entire party, and you're like, what? What? The difficulty does not scale. Every location has a specific set level of enemies and bosses. So if you go to an area and you get your ass handed to you, you're not good enough for this area, so you go back to another area, clear it out, level up a little bit, progress the story, then come back to these areas. That, for me, is the way these games should be made, and I totally love that. Now, there are what I call Mass Effect did this very well. It's your party sort of missions.
Yeah, the storyline behind them.
The personal side quest missions, which you get to figure out more about who your party is, whether you actually want them in the Inquisition or not, whether their views, line up with yours or whether they're in direct contrast to yours. You've closed down one of the rifts.
Yes.
And these rifts are scattered across the entire land. And, of course, is the main thrust of the game. Now, the personal character side missions in the game are the best. They really are great. so much better than the second one. Even though the second one is still good, I love the character stuff in that one. But what makes this game great is the overarching story. In Dragon Age Origins, you were tasked with fighting back the Blight. You were told that you would probably die at the end if you didn't sacrifice yourself to stop the Darkspawn from taking over the land. Of course, you had different choices that you could make, whether to have a romance with Morrigan and create a child that would absorb the soul of the Darkspawn. And so, literally at the end of the game, she's like, have sex with me. I'm going to have your baby, and we're going to sacrifice this baby, or I'm going to keep this baby, and you will live. And the Darkspawn will still be defeated. And you're like, but I'm in love with this other person. Now I'm going to have sex with you. But at the same time, I fell in love with Morrigan. So she was like, do this and we can live. But she also says at the end of that game, that after this, even though we're in love, I'm taking this child and you will never see me again. Ooh. I'm just like, oh my God, no, I love you, Morrigan. I'm coming with you. And so there was a DLC in that game where you went off with your character to go find out what happened to her and find out that child. But then Morrigan turns up in this game after all the events. Oh, it's just so good. It's just so good. You just love the stories. And so, of course, I have different characters, and so I've had different relationships and love interests throughout the game.
Yes.
And the game... the game's kind of got a bit of a reputation for forcing its love affair characters onto you. There's I played a male character, and a couple of times I've had other male characters come up to me. They take their shirts off, and they're like, I like you. And you're like, so you got to delicately say, no.
No.
But this game does also have orgies.
Right, okay.
I not got to the orgy point in Dragon Age Inquisition. I didn't play it enough, but in the first game, I think you end up getting nearly all of your party in the bedroom at the same time. You're literally in the tent, and the characters just keep coming in.
That's a bonding experience.
That is how tightly knit these characters can become.
Yes, yeah.
And I also love that a character that you could have had an orgy with in the first game turns up in this game and recognizes characters that he slept with in the first game, but you weren't there, but the other characters, because of the things that happened, remember it.
Right, okay.
That is how detailed the writing is in this game. And so, yeah, the romance and the sex stuff is in there, but people love it.
Yes.
People really love it because it's a part of being human, to have sex with, people that you love, or to have sex in times of... you've just had this massive battle and you're still alive and the adrenaline's kicking in and endorphins are kicking in and the passion is there, and it helps bring these characters alive.
There may be casualties.
Now, what also is a negative, I will say, on the games is something that Mass Effect 2 and 3 did very well, is that your party members can die. When you get to a point in the Mass Effect games when it's like, choose somebody to hold back this Geth attack, whilst the rest of you make a run, and you choose somebody, and then the rest of you make a run, and then you watch the other character who holds them back successfully and comes running back to you and gets shot down in a blaze of glory, and you sat there almost weeping, like, I made the wrong choice, but the choice is made, and so you could be one of those people that goes, oh, I'm going to save it, I have to not save it, and load it back up and do it again. I was one of those guys that just went, no, I made my choice, that happened.
That was the same with me.
If I want to see it again, I'm going to play another 60 hours to get here again with different choices and different motivations to make it happen again. With Inquisition, nobody dies. Spoiler, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Nobody dies. But there is points in the game where you can have massive falling outs with characters and they just go, fuck the Inquisition, I'm out of here. That's because you've decided to go with the Templars. And this person was a mage who's like, how am I supposed to stick around here when you've surrounded the entire Inquisition with Templars that want to burn me at the stake? I'm out of here. And it flips the other way around. Now, you can, if you're very delicate as an Inquisitor, balance everybody out. And so nobody leaves. But still, certain things will unfold. Now, the other thing is Dragon Age 1 had an amazing climactic battle. Dragon Age 2 failed.
Right,
It really just came to a confrontation between the mages and the Templars, which had been brewing the whole game, which really is the beginning of this game.
Yeah.
This game has an epic finale, which still falls flat on its face. Which is why I still at this moment put Mass Effect just above Dragon Age, and it's because the ending of Dragon Age 1 Origins was so great, number 2 not so good, and number 3 has this amazing build up where you build up the Inquisition, you become the Inquisitor, you sit on the throne, and you have your advisors coming up and telling you, after that last mission, you captured him alive, he's in the cells, do you want to interrogate him now? Your advisors bring him up in chains and sit you in front of the throne room, and you pass judgment life in the prison cells, or death by execution by me. And it cuts to you in a cutscene swinging the axe, decapitating whoever it was that you arrested on that last mission. So the choices are there.
Yeah.
And so you build up this Inquisition, you build up and level up your generals, you repair your city, you repair the citadel, you build all these defenses, and then you go off and fight the end boss. And it's like, well, why did I build up the Inquisition?
Yeah.
Why did I
do all
go and
that?
do all this stuff? Because the enemy never turns up at the Inquisitor's door. And so it's like, it's kind of like that thing in Mass Effect 3 where you have to build up Earth's resources and defenses for the final battle, and if you don't, the battle might not go so well. And again, in Mass Effect 3, it kind of really didn't make that much difference, did it?
That's it. You go to the final battle, and then you're like, game over. Oh,
like I
okay.
said, they retconned that slightly where they added in extra animations depending on the choices that you'd made in the previous games. Inquisition doesn't have that. It just has this very rushed, this was the bad guy all along, go fight him, and then you can close the gates and it's over.
Yeah.
And then you get the small vignettes again about what happened to each character afterwards, including what can only be described as sequel bait.
Yeah.
Now, we know that the Dragon Age story is not over. The Dragon Age stories can just keep going. It's a huge fantasy world. And so they can keep going with new stories and new ideas and new characters and keep that world going. But from a story perspective, they've got it right from beginning, middle, and kind of dropped the ball and almost caught it at the end. So that's the only real weakness I can give to the game, other than the fact that the game does also have quite a few bugs, a few technical hiccups.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people can be quite forgiving of a game that is this big. There's this open world. It's got all these dialogue things, all these script things.
Yeah, a couple of things here and there.
A couple of things here and there going wrong. You can sort of go, okay, it's understandable. BioWare should fix it down the line.
Yeah.
There's to be certain quests that'll get stuck in your logbook that you can never finish because of a certain bug, or there'll be certain NPC characters that are not where they're supposed to be. I had quite a few instances of the game where I would sort of fall into an invisible hole. Yeah. And then my character would not walk anywhere, but he would sort of moonwalk backwards on the spot whilst moving around, and you just sort of like phantasm ghost like move around the environment. So you're like, what the hell has happened? And there was no real way to fix it other than quitting and loading back up again. So a few bugs and a few broken quests, but it did not ruin the experience. There's a couple of funny glitches where Solus would end up raising a cup of tea, and instead of drinking it, he'd feed it into his forehead. You're like, well, what's going on here? He's just bathing himself in tea. Yeah. But the combat in this game is really engaging. As you had a brief taste of it, just getting in there, pushing buttons, attacking, moving, dodging, changing.
It's pretty simple just to hold right trigger and fire off the bow. And obviously I just looked at my inventory and realised I could change to my shield and my sword. But I don't think I'm at the right level yet, so I'm going to stick with the bow.
Yeah.
But it's also balancing the stealth to escape when they get too close, because they will get too close if you don't manage your troops.
Yeah.
But then also, obviously, using the electrical arrows to pull off lots of damage to whatever that is over there with 230
you'll find
health.
some enemies that have weaknesses to certain, lightning and fire.
Yeah.
I like the fact that the combat system is pretty simple. You got attack and move, and then you have all of your specials, which, as you can see in the bottom right corner, is each character has their own abilities. And what I love is you can go and play as those other characters,
yes,
and see what skills they have and how they work, so that when you go back to playing as your hero, you know what the other characters are capable of. And I like the fact that the AI is competent enough that your other fighters will deal with the situation as needed.
Yeah, they won't do anything silly like the lady with the sword and shield. She will go in combat and survive most combat.
Yes.
With as long as you guys are doing enough damage in the background to nail them. Yeah.
Cassandra, she was my love interest in this game, and it was such a twist. I never actually thought this the girl on the left there. I never thought she would be the one that I would fall in love with while playing this game, because she's that stern sort of, I have no life but the Inquisition. And but the more you get to know her, the more layers you peel away from her.
Yeah, the more she
realize
warms
that
to
she's
you.
got that little naughty side inside her as well, that she just tries to keep away from anyone. They don't really want to. She doesn't want anyone to know that she is actually a sensitive woman underneath this cold, hard exterior.
Well, look at the world that she lives in. Everybody's out to kill each other.
Yeah, of course, my love affair from the first game, Liliana, who is the rogue,
Yeah,
who was an ex sort of nun, who is into poisoning and assassination, and oh my god, I love her. I love her so much. You know, I want her to be real. It's just the writing again. It's to praise all of the characters. The voice acting is what gets you.
Yeah.
Because you listen to these characters. A lot of the time in games, you'd be like, skip, I can read the dialogue. In this game, I never did that. I never did it because I loved the way that the voice actors delivered their dialogue.
Yeah.
So in character, so real. Varric, who's in your party right now, was also a character in Dragon Age 2, and I'm so glad they brought him into the third one, because he is one of the wittiest characters who has an insight into everybody in every location that you go to. He's like the rogue who knows everything.
Yeah, yeah.
And just has this great style of humor behind everything. It's just so great. It's so memorable. And I guess lastly, the soundtrack. Now, the composer for the first two games is not around for this one, but the music in this game is also epic, and it's great. You feel the sense of the world. Every environment has a new...
Are they hollows from Dark Souls?
They look like it. It looks like he's trying to kindle a bonfire right now.
This guy's like, I kindled too much!
So yeah, the music in this game is fantastic. It sweeps you along. It gets you invested, and it gets you rallied up. And the cutscenes in the game are so good when you see the marching legions going into battle. When you see the dragons.
That's it. They seem the cutscenes, they flow really nicely into the story. You kind of just you're running along. You stop cut sequence. You're like, right, now I can pause and I can actually look at stuff and take it in. Yeah,
just mesmerizing visuals, characters, gameplay. But like I said, I played Dragon Age 1 Origins and Dragon Age 2 again and again and again and again. In this one, I got through halfway and then started another character, but I never felt the compulsion to play it again. And so I think Dragon Age 2 is the weakest.
Right.
And then this one, and then Origins is still the best one.
Well, I mean, you've got to complete this one before you can say it's weak.
Well, I did. I completed it, and because the ending was so anticlimactic,
right,
I didn't feel the compulsion to complete it again and again. I was like, I like the decisions that I'd made. I'd like the story that I wove through it. I don't need the DLC. I don't want to go through those big, huge, beautiful, detailed environments that are essentially empty again.
Yeah.
I was like, I just can't bring myself to do that again, and so I moved on to the Witcher games and Mass Effect games and put this game away. But I still remember it fondly. I still remember the characters and what happened, the main points that happened in the game. The leveling up system is great. Decking out your characters with different armor and weapons as you find throughout the game. The fact that this game has dragons, these epic boss encounters, which the first time you see them, you won't be ready for.
I've just noticed an issue the game does have.
Yeah.
It's taking my hat off in the cut sequence.
Yeah, well, I think there is an option to actually take... In the game, there's an option to take helmets off, because a lot of people won't put helmets on their characters, because when it comes to the dialogue, you just have this helmet, and you can't see any facial expressions. Mass Effect had the same thing when you wore visors and goggles and things. You couldn't see your face anymore, so they had an option to remove it for cutscenes.
Yeah.
Which, just BioWare knows what their gamers want in a game. And they are ever since Star Wars: The Old Republic games, they've really just been my go-to for these games. And I can't wait for Mass Effect Andromeda. And they literally said just the other day, yes, we looked at Inquisition and we looked what worked and didn't work for its open world-esque environments, and we've tried to trim that down for Mass Effect Andromeda, so that you don't spend 20 hours in the first location going, oh, look at this, it's a rock.
Yeah, saying that, I used to love Mass Effect 1 driving around the planets.
Yeah.
It really pissed me off that they took it away in 2 and 3. That was one of the coolest things I always found.
It was a side feature, yeah, but again, it was a lot of time for little reward.
It was, and that was the issue, is that you had this whole planet with like 3 things on.
Mm-hmm.
But then the sci-fi geek in me was like, not every planet would be brimming with life.
Yeah.
If I'm going to go to a desolate moon, I expect it to be a desolate moon. But it's the fact that I could land on the desolate moon in a Jeep, in the little buggy, and drive around.
Yeah.
I get the Mass Effect 2 and it's like, probe away,
Same
probe
as
away,
3, yeah.
probe away. I'm like, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. And so what I like about this game is you have the table of operations, and you choose which missions you want to go to. I like the fact that you build up resources and you send them on little away missions and skirmishes, and you have a timer to wait for them to come back. The game system works, and I think that's probably what they'll continue to use in future BioWare games.
Kill it, bring it down.
So I think you've got to the first major, the boss of the introduction. So yeah, I wholly and highly recommend all the Dragon Age games. Only last year I literally played through Dragon Age 1 Awakening, and then stopped again. I was like, I might go into Dragon Age 2 and then carry on to Inquisition for another slant into the world. But unfortunately I stopped when The Witcher 3 came out.
Yeah.
But I could still easily go back and pick up any of the Dragon Age games, any one of them, and just and be lost for 60 hours again. Just get invested in the stories and the characters, because it's like a movie, like your favorite movie that you like to rewatch.
Yeah.
And just see things slightly differently and have things happen just slightly differently each time. And of course, it's one of those things where all the DLC is out for all of the games, and so if you still want that extra bit of content, I have a small problem with EA and the fact that they never really put their DLCs on sale, and a lot of their DLCs are still the same price today as they were the day that they came out.
Yeah.
And so there's just only that small hesitation I have with story DLC, which is not pivotal to the game, but just adds that extra bit more, because the game leaves you wanting more by the time you finished it. And so if you've never played a Dragon Age game, grab any one of them. Start anywhere. Start with Inquisition. You will be waiting patiently with the rest of us for news about the next Dragon Age game. But I will also say, never pick up a Dragon Age game for its multiplayer. Fuck you, EA, for making or forcing BioWare to add one of the shittest multiplayer experiences I've ever experienced in a video game.
That's harsh.
It is harsh. Mass Effect 3 had it great. Where you and a couple of friends team up and you fight against 20 waves of increasingly difficult enemies. You had all the different characters and classes and weapons and skills and abilities and upgrades that you could bring into it. And the harder you fought, the better points you got to buy better crates to get better weapons, and the loop continued. But what you were also doing was, at that time, depending on where in the world you were fighting, you were building up resources to help build up your Earth defense meter for the final confrontation in the game.
Yeah.
With Dragon Age Inquisition, you're not building up resources for the Inquisition. All you're doing is completing these little mini dungeons to get resources to buy crates to upgrade this multiplayer character to continue to play on 3 maps, which is all the game initially launched with. And then as you up the difficulties, the game became impossible. And then it was like, hey, spend another $50 and we'll give you some coins to buy some chests to get the items that you need to go and do these missions, which don't give you any achievements, don't give you anything towards a single player campaign, and only allow you to play this cheap ass fucking multiplayer system easier. It's garbage. Absolute garbage. I don't understand why they did it, other than EA wanted microtransactions in the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely
horrid,
horrid,
more money.
Horrid idea. But that you don't ever have to look at the multiplayer when you look at the Dragon Age games. Hopefully they fix that for the next Dragon Age game whenever they get around to it.
Yeah, whenever they get around to it.
Mass Effect is coming. I cannot wait. I'm a huge fan of BioWare. I'll play anything they put in front of me. And that's going to be it from us this Friday for Off the Shelf Reviews. We'll be back next Friday with another video game. Of course, you can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Patreon. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Peace out.